Tell me about the importance of a 6-month emergency fund.
An emergency fund is your fire extinguisher, point blank. Inspirational people say this, but I think it applies financially too, right? No one is coming to save you.
Jacky,
Chris,
thank you so much for being with us today.
thanks for having me.
How did you get started helping people plan their financial future?
Oh, that's a good question. Not too sure how much time we have, but I like to tell folks it's a little bit kind of like the Forrest Gump movie. I did not expect to be where I am. I actually went to school for film and production. Yeah. And I graduated in '08, which, as you know, was probably the best time to find work in any industry, right? But to long story short, I started off in life and health insurance, and I really realized I had a skill set to help individuals understand complex things. Come to find out, I had a knack for helping people really see how their insurance policy helped them. And I liked it. I liked being a resource for people, and things just kind of went from there. I started studying for my series licenses, because these folks would ask me questions about their retirement planning and their investment accounts. So from there, it just made sense to increase the services and increase my knowledge so I can continue to be a resource for those folks. So that was in Florida, and then I relocated to Philly back in 2014 and started at Wells Fargo Advisors, and the rest was kind of history.
What is the overlap or similarities between planning a movie shoot where you have all these different charts of accounts happening, all these people you have to hire, and planning financial freedom for your future?
That's a wonderful question. I would say the nuance. A lot of folks think that it's a lot of big swinging decisions, but to be good at it and to be effective at it, you have to understand how this decision affects other things that might not be on your radar, right? Not to get too into the weeds, but if someone wants to do a Roth conversion, sure, they might owe taxes on it, but if they're close to retirement or Medicare, that might affect their Medicare premiums. So understanding how all the little pieces play in together and how one decision can essentially reverberate through other parts of their financial life. I think the planners that have a good handle on that are typically like top tier.
I had a conversation with a mentor of mine yesterday, actually, who he closed he was a project manager for million pound deals in England. And he said, as a project manager, he always has the plan, but there's always a bunch of backup plans.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How does that apply to wealth management?
I think everything with wealth management is preparing for when it doesn't go your way, whether it's the market not doing what you expected it to do, or sometimes, funny enough, your client's not doing what you expect them to do. So that being defensive and understanding how to pivot and problem solve continually. It's just a constant problem-solving exercise over and over again. That is typically, I think, my day-to-day for the most part, outside of your day-to-day planning for our families, is like, hey, we're planning to do X, Y, Z. We're planning to retire in 5 years, but I just got a severance package. Now retirement's today. What do we do? How do we solve that?
In your day-to-day with clients,
Mm-hmm.
What percent is logistics and what percent is emotional?
That's a good question too. I'd say a strong percentage. Majority of it is emotional. High. I don't want to say too high of a figure, but I'd say 75-80% can be emotional. I have a strong belief, and probably some other folks as well. Someone's financial life, their savings, their money, it comes with a whole lot of isms, right? A lot of biases, or just there's a psychology around money that can make someone act in a manner that really isn't logical, because of what it's tied to, whether it might be it's tied to their perception of themselves, their worth, or it might be tied to things that they've seen in their past, right? Or things they've seen maybe their parents lived through, or even just like a trauma where like, hey, they might have grown up in with limited means, but now they have a scarcity mindset. And it's the opposite. It's like, hey, you're retired. You saved up all your life, all your career to spend. You can spend now, right? Don't go buy a 50-foot yacht, but you can enjoy these seeds you've been sowing for these past couple decades. So a lot of it's emotional. When we look at stock market, the volatility, it's interesting to see the families we serve that are closer to retirement who've lived through '08, they've lived through '01, they've lived through '87. They've seen their parents live through, prior, meltdowns, and they still have the same amount of fear and panic as it did the last time, right? So someone would logically say, well, listen, you've seen this happen. You've seen the market come back over and over again, but, it's logic is second, third, or fourth in line sometimes in events like that.
What are the patterns you've identified as you serve many clients, and how do you serve a client who has a lot of fear?
Education first. Fear comes from just not having the facts across anything really. So a lot of it is history, market history. Of course, right? The past doesn't really predict the future, but it rhymes. And saying, hey, listen, last time we saw something like this historically, this is what happened, over the last 8 or 10 times in history. And also having that game plan in place. Kind of back to our point about preparing for the problem, when we plan for our families, we have a game plan. We have a game plan for great markets. We have a game plan for sideways markets. We have a game plan for bad markets. So what really helps is action, right? Action cures fear. So, okay, the market's pulling back. It's going against us. What should we do? Here's the game plan we had, and let's execute it.
Can you contrast taking bold risks and being a good steward of someone's wealth?
I guess it depends on how would you classify a bold risk? So for us, with myself and our team, we're pretty measured, pretty calculated with what we do. And if there is something that is a risk, right, we have some families who might want to be a little bit more speculative with how they're operating. At the end of the day, although our clients trust us to be their steward, we're not the boss. They're our boss. So my goal has always been, I'm going to give you the good, the bad, the ugly, right? What's the best case scenario on the left path? What's the worst case scenario on the right path? And vice versa. And let's make an intentional decision about how we proceed forward. So you can be a steward, and you can take risk, but taking risk for the sake of taking risk, in my opinion, isn't being a good steward. It might just be, hey, a client might say, hey, you know what? I've got a couple $1,000. What's like something that just has high upside? And I completely expect it not to go, but something like that, maybe. But when it's really our decision, we're pretty disciplined with our strategy and how we approach things.
What's the difference between wealth management and a wirehouse?
I don't know if we have enough time. So, a wirehouse, I think, is I don't want to be insulting here. I have a lot of good friends at wirehouses, but I think, in my opinion, a wirehouse is, it's like when you walk in on the street and you see a telephone booth and like, holy moly, people are still using those. Once upon a time before we had the internet and you can open your app and trade within seconds, access was important. You needed a stock broker. You needed someone who can get you into IBM, Apple, you name it. And that's how wirehouses are born, because access to information, access to the ability to trade was difficult. It was a huge hurdle. So it made sense to be at wirehouses because these firms, they had the resources to support the advisor and get the client what they need. But it's 2025. A big reason why my team went independent was we looked around and we did some due diligence. And although it was scary to leave like a big name, we realized that that model that made us feel safe, really at the end of the day was a sandbox, and you think, oh, this is all the resources you get, these are the limitations, but Wirehouse is an institution that's designed to create revenue like any business, and their agenda are shareholders, right? And when you get out of that model, your agenda, your shareholders are your clients, your families, or the businesses you serve. So I think the real big difference is, again, who is your real boss at the end of the day, and who do you have to keep happy to keep showing up and to keep your job?
Can you contrast the benefits of a larger firm that's kind of doing the kitchen sink method of taking a lot of funds and managing for everybody versus kind of what you and your team do independent, a little bit more small, a little more nimble, able to kind of operate with each client as needed? Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that.
I think it just becomes with how many layers you have to go through to get what you need. Back at my old firm, big national firm, if I needed to do a tax loss harvesting, I had to send a request, I had to go up, I had to get approved by this guy, get pushed forward by this person, and I'll hear back in a couple of days. Now, a client texts me, hey, do you have 5 minutes? Sure. They call me, and the conversation is done in 5. And I think it's not impossible to keep that as a firm grows, but what I have seen around me is they lose sight of that. And for me, I'm a big relationship person. I will always want my clients to have my cell phone and call me directly. Like they're my boss. So I think that is like really the biggest, because at the end of the day, investments have been commoditized. You throw, a rock at the wall and, you can land on pretty much any good low cost, fund that takes care of what you need. It's the other things, a lot of the qualitative or just the proactivity that makes it more impactful for folks.
Why do you enjoy being a part of an independent team?
It's, to be honest, it's fun. It's, our families and the businesses, they call us and, hey, I have this problem to solve. Can you help me? And, I was the kid that took things apart, toys apart, see how they worked. So I was like, yes, I would love to solve this problem. I've never seen it before. So it's fun, and I feel like I'm doing my job at these wirehouses because of the way they're set up. There's a lot of limitations, right? I'm a certified financial planner. I am dangerous in tax planning, estate planning, investments, you name it. But at these bigger firms, they say, hey, if someone mentions their taxes, refer them to their CPA. If someone mentions estate planning, refer them to their estate planner. And hearing that enough times gave me a little bit of imposter syndrome, because I used to say, listen, work with me. I'll help you with all these things. But when rubber hit the road, I wasn't allowed to. So really being able to, one, do what I say I will do for our families, but two, just being that person, being like, they're the CFO of their family. Like, hey, Jacky, the things I solve for the families, a lot of times it might not even be under my wheelhouse, but I'm like, hey, I've never heard this question before. I'm gonna find out. So when someone else down the line asks, I have an answer already.
How did your experience entering the job market in 2008 kind of impact how you make financial decisions today?
That's a great question. And now I'm thinking about it, it did. So when I graduated in '08, I did have a job. I should back up. I did have a job. I worked for Miami Herald. I was in the online production department where to film online segments and put them online. And this is when it was like new. Like newspapers are still crushing it. And then basically over time, the whole department got laid off. You know, when I saw the guy who directed our department, who worked there for 30 years, got laid off, I knew I was around the corner. And what it really, thankfully, you know, I'm grateful that at the time I was fresh from college, still living with my mom. So I did have some cushion, but, you know, I went a good 7-8 months without steady income. I'm a worker. I know how to go out and make money. I was doing a lot of odd jobs, you know, working, you know, building furniture in a warehouse, helping people move on Craigslist, all types of funky things. But just, it was the first time where I realized, hey, the income can turn off immediately, you know, without warning, in something out of your control. And I still, even when I talk to families that we serve, or even just friends, they say, hey, I've got a little bit extra money. I want to do X, Y, Z. I'm like, yeah, but what if something happens, right? So is a good friend of mine I was just working out with a couple weeks ago. Same thing. He's working on a rental property. He's flush cash. Like, hey, I think I want to maybe stretch a little bit, get another one. I was like, hey, you know what? Just wait. Just wait. You know, don't spread yourself too thin. And he told me, funny enough, he said something happened, and in my head, I just remember that conversation. I started laughing. So, you know, you're always on the way, or in the middle, or coming out of a crisis. It's just, there's one coming down, or you're already one right now. So that's like how I think about it. And that's why, you know, financial planning 101, when I talk to anyone, is, do you have your emergency fund? You want to invest? Wonderful. Do you have an emergency fund? You know, like, you want to buy a home? Perfect. Do you have an if we didn't check that first step, we can look at step 2, 3, or 4.
I remember, so my experience that you had was the pandemic, because I was a wedding videographer at the time,
Yeah.
and I had stretched myself too thin for a long time, like all of 2019. It's like, woo, it's raining, and then I made a bunch of like independent short films for myself and just stretched thin, and then everything canceled.
Next job,
So tell me about the importance of a 6-month emergency fund.
It is, an emergency fund is your fire extinguisher, point blank. There's a saying, a lot of like inspirational people say this, but I think it applies financially too, right? No one is coming to save you. And when we look at the pandemic, right, everyone was in financial duress. You know, banks were, you know, sure, there were PPP loans, but banks weren't lending money left and right. So the emergency fund insulates you from a lot of things. If you're invested in the stock market and your fridge goes out, you need $2,000, and all your money's in the stock market, I can all but guarantee you it's going to be a down day or a down week, right? Because that's how ironic life is. And also, anything that you don't have on cash goes on credit. And we already know how ridiculous the debt is country-wise, you know, on the individual and even the country itself. So the emergency fund is what protects you from further financial duress. So yeah, we'll get a call from someone say, hey, I want to invest. I'm like, hey, you don't even have a emergency fund. You want need help? We'll help you figure out how to save and build one up. But emergency fund is absolutely imperative.
If I asked you, what is the primary way you serve your clients, what comes to mind?
The primary? I think clarity. And that has layered clarity on where you are. You know, for me, like, my job is to help you achieve your goals, but it's also not to lie to you. So whether it's, hey, you're spending too much, or you're not on track on that retirement, or, hey, you have these investments that are expensive or you don't need, right? So I think clarity is what what we really drive for, because that with clarity and understanding where you are in any sense, you can make decisions on how you're going to walk from there. So, yeah, I think that's what it would be.
As you're being authentic with people and clear and truthful, how do you tell hard truths to people about their finances?
That's a good question. So I'm a little bit optimist. So I start with the good part, which is typically, more often than not, I have the solution before the problem. So I'm like, hey, listen, I'll just let you know, and I don't have great news. The good news is I have some ideas to get us out of this, whatever this issue is, but let me bring the problem up to you. One of our philosophies is try to have a solution before you bring it up, a problem to someone. And sometimes if depending on what that problem is, if there isn't maybe a clear solution, empathy. There are some problems in life that don't have a solution, and being a human, of course, the relationship with our families are our business because they hire me, but I'm a human being. They're human beings, and sometimes empathy on, again, clients trust us with something very dear to them, and we develop relationships, and they come to us and tell us things that have nothing to do with their financial life, but it's, hey, this is a problem I'm going through or dealing with, and just being a person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Every music video I shoot, it's like I could almost bill a therapy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Tell me about it. Yeah. I have made jokes with some families that, hey, I can moonlight as a marriage counselor. Well, we talk about these conversations about I can moonlight as a marriage counselor, or at least in that very niche of marriage counseling and money. I think I can do some work there if I wanted to. Yeah.
Is life too expensive?
Define expensive. I don't want to answer a question with a question, but in what way?
Can people make it anymore?
Yes. It may not be as easy, but yeah, people can make it. I think, and I don't want to sound, I don't know, but for what I see is sometimes the folks that we work with, there are a lot of external factors that are played into the decisions they make that simply should not be in the calculation. And yeah, I definitely, I don't disagree that we're in a way entering a different space in the world. But the rule book has not really changed. The playbook hasn't really changed. Yeah, it might take more hours to pay off this or that, but I think there's just decision making that should be a little bit more, what's the word? Grounded. We have, I mean, sometimes even high school kids that call into us and say, hey, I want to major in X versus Y. And I'll say, hey, you can major in X, but it's going to cost you $100,000 and the average salary is $40,000. To do the math, it's a lot, and I'm not saying, you shouldn't do it, but understand that decision before you get into it. And from what I see for individuals that are starting out their new careers or mid-career, I think there's an impatience. When I started out, all the old heads said, yeah, you're gonna be paid nothing. You're gonna be underpaid for a long time until you're good enough to get paid, and then if you're good enough long enough, you'll be overpaid for what you do. I don't think that's changed. when I started at Merrill cold calling, I had a kid on the way. My wife was a teacher. We weren't crushing it. I was driving like Lyft and Uber and stuff. But I had the faith in myself and the future of my career that it was temporary. And I think now it's, hey, I see this a lot. I'm not saying this is everyone. Don't get me wrong. Hey, I've got a great income and I want my optics to reflect my great income. And at the end of the day, it's not how much you make, it's how much you save. Point blank. So, things are more expensive. The world is not the way it looked decades ago, but if you truly have the desire to achieve and build wealth and save and afford the things you want to afford, it won't be easy. It definitely won't be easy, but you can. And it might not be quick. That's another thing. It won't, I worked with someone pro bono. It took them like a year to get an emergency fund, but they did it, so yeah, that's kind of like how I feel about it.
Who or what is perpetuating this impatient narrative that you should be skipping steps to young people?
I don't know if anyone's perpetuating the narrative. I think it is the land of the instant, right? Everything is instant. Again, the world is getting faster, right? Again, trading stocks used to be a process. Now it's a click of a button. We used to have to wait until Friday night to watch TV. So it's just, and it's by no fault of their own, but we live in an instant society, right? I Ubered here. I pushed a button and there was a car waiting outside to take me here in 2 minutes. So unfortunately, that is what our my son's 6. Like he doesn't even know what live TV is. He was so confused. We're watching live TV. He's like, what is this? I have to wait for the ad. I can't skip it. So it's not like it's a narrative. It's just, when a generation is just growing up with instant feedback, instant results, that's what's going to happen. So it's difficult, but it's just something we just, I guess, got to figure out.
I think I recently learned that the biggest superpower of young people is time. If you take $1 coffee and you think about if you're 20 and you take $1 coffee and you multiply that by like 160, by the time you're 55, 60, that coffee, you actually paid $160 for that coffee because that's what $1 would be worth.
Yeah. It literally, it's compound interest, right? It's insane. It's one of the things I always talk about. I talk to like high school kids or middle school kids. I'm like, hey, even if you could save $10 today, your 40, 50-year-old self will be happy because that $10 will be a whole lot more money in a couple decades. So, time is still and will always be the number one resource and asset.
Can you make any commentary on the gentleman in the rented Ferrari talking about some get rich quick on Instagram or the MLM trying to kind of rope in 18 to 35-year-old men?
I typically say it's because I have friends that will send me something or even sometimes clients will see something and send to me like, is this real? I can guarantee you this. I work with business owners. I work with entrepreneurs. And I know personally, if someone is making $50,000 a month, they're not trying to teach you. They don't care. They're going to make money and they're trying to learn how to make $100,000 a month. Now, there are people who have maxed it out, right? Like if you look at 𝐏𝐢𝐜𝐿, he's graduated and now he's given back. A lot of his education is free, right? But if someone's like, oh my, look all this money I'm making, buy my course. So if I'm making $50,000 a month, why am I like, how much is this $1,000 course going to move the needle for me? So I usually say that, something along those lines, and they're like, yeah, you know what, you're right. So, yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Buy my course on selling courses to sell courses. Is inflation theft?
Is inflation theft? No, I think it's just a natural occurrence of things. It is like natural. It's, there's nothing we can really do about it. The way the financial system is set up, for better or worse, it's essentially will always be a thing. And inflation usually is an issue for folks in two parts. The first is folks who are not increasing their income, and there are people that might be in a situation where they can't control that, right? They might be an hourly employee somewhere, and how to solve that problem, honestly, I don't know, and I'll let you know if I do. But there are also folks who, lose on inflation because they feel safe that they have a bunch of cash in the bank, right? They've taken an emergency fund and have gone beyond it. And the U.S. dollar isn't meant to be saved. It's not a store of value, right? It's meant to be exchanged for goods. It's meant to be invested. It's meant to be used for things. So, inflation has always been here before we ever measured it. It will be here, if I expect, into perpetuity, as long as we're using money as our, So yeah, I don't think it's theft. I think some folks don't really understand it, and I believe if you're lucky enough to be in a position where your income isn't growing, and you can do something about it, I think you should, whether it might be adding to your skill set to get a promotion or getting a new job. That's something. Or if you've got a ton of money, cash in the bank, and inflation's eating into it, yeah, you should probably be doing something with it. So yeah, I don't think it's theft. It's definitely not great, but it just comes with the territory.
If you're helping a client make a very long, arduous process like saving over 5 or 10 years for a retirement plan, and the results might be slow as they're building, how do you find yourself how do you make an impact?
Again, education. So we have good planning tools that we can compare and contrast. We say, hey, listen, this is what you're doing now. Simply put, this is what it can look like at retirement. This is how much you can spend or not spend at retirement. If we made this change, this is option B. And of course, there's all the disclosures, right? None of this is guaranteed, but we use pretty conservative things, right? We're not giving someone 15% return every year, but something that is reasonable. And I like to break it down to real sense, right? If it's, call it $200 a month extra to save, I was like, okay, well, what are we spending $200 a month right now that's more important than spending an extra $2,000 a month at retirement? So then it's really just changing their thought process. There's a book called Set for Life. It's a really good book, but it really defines, every decision you make, you're choosing that for your future, right? So like if your goal is to save up for a house, to save up $20,000 for a down payment for a house in 3 years, and you spend $100 over your budget because you want to go to a birthday party or what have you, right or wrong, you're choosing that birthday party over your goal, right? It's not me to decide that's good or bad, but at the end of the day, when you boil it down, and it's a pretty binary thought process, but it's true. If you want to save up for retirement or whatever it is, if you're spending outside of your plan, you're choosing whatever that thing is over what you were setting out to do in the beginning.
It's almost like you're a coach.
Yeah, I've heard that a couple times. Yeah.
I don't know if somebody at Merrill would be getting that same treatment of talking through the emotional benefits of the. How do you not get frustrated with your clients when they make poor emotional decisions?
I don't, because it's emotion. The logic is not there. I have a 6-year-old, so I see exactly, I just, I understand. One, I've done a lot of reading and stuff on just the psychology of money. There's a book called Psychology of Money. It's really good out there. So I really understand where it's coming from. So yeah, I'd like to say I'm a pretty patient person. So it's hard, really tough to get me like frustrated. So yeah, it's not wonderful. I'm not happy about it, but sometimes they make decisions that, for me, sometimes I wish they can understand how against them these decisions are making. But some they do what they do sometimes, and that's all you can do. You can handle.
What have you found is the best way to build your client base and to connect with people?
It depends. If you were me 10 years ago and you moved to Philly and didn't know anyone, what we used to call smile and dial, cold call. It was fast. It was efficient. It was also painful because people say I didn't know how mean. I'm from South Florida, and people can be mean in Florida. I did not know how mean people could be to strangers. But I mean, cold calling over those 3 or 4 years consistently is what built the foundation of the practice I have now. But then after, thankfully, convincing enough strangers over the phone that they can trust me to be a steward, you have enough people where if you do your job well enough, people will talk about you. And if you care about the people who trust you with something so important, they will talk about you. So I'm very grateful now. I don't cold call anymore. But we have families that, they're sending people to us because they're happy. And weirdly enough, I'm distributing money out of a 529 that I started 10 years ago. It's like it's a weird circle thing. So if you're good at it and you do right by folks and you put them first, and also just survive, right? One of the best advice I got from someone was just survive long enough until you get lucky. You can make it.
Here's a question. So you're scaling your business. You're going to be continuing to bring in more clients and probably bring in more staff to help assist coaching, counseling those clients. What would you say is like, or do you have a number at which you say like, that's the maximum amount of people I want to personally work with a year?
Yes. So we already have that. So 50. Wow. And again, is it the best financial decision as a business owner, right? If I had shareholders, probably not. But is it the best decision for the families I serve? Definitely yes. So, back at Merrill, we had tons of clients and we were successful on paper. But I couldn't remember the last conversation I had with any client because I had so many. And now, our goal, again, to be that resource, right? I like the fact that when a client calls, most of the time, I can call them back pretty quickly, right? I might be in the middle of a meeting, but I think, we've been independent almost 4 years now. I think once I had to call a client back the next day, and that's just because they called me late, So for us, it's 50. And I like to say 50, that's like a real number, right? Like my mom's a client, so I'm not going to count her, right? She's like, Jacky, just, do whatever. But yeah, 50 families that we're working with, planning for, and looking out for.
I love that. I think we're cavemen operating 21st century software, where we're cavemen hardware, designed to work in communities of 50 to 200 and past that. Like we're not designed to empathize with 2 million people.
Yeah. Oh, no.
We're designed to empathize with 200 people. Yeah. And 50 are your work, And,
and in 50, it's like, I know my families, right? I know their kids. I know what their kids are doing. I know like their sports teams and what types of desserts, like I know what pie they cook on Thanksgiving, and it doesn't add to the bottom line, but makes me happy. I get to know these people in their lives. So, yeah.
How does your involvement raising a family and your integration in your community play a role in wealth managing?
I think it's just a lot of the same. A lot of just care. A lot of just trying to do good and do right by others. I think, not to get on a soapbox here, I think we all just have a responsibility to help where we can within reason. I'm not saying you need to wake up every day and go build houses for people, but I can imagine you can carve out some time for someone else in need. So for me, it's important to do that, to give back. Also for my son to see that, to say, hey, yeah, you can be in finance and business and do all this stuff, but you can also be human and have a heart and, give your food to someone who asked for it and just help people. So yeah, it's all connected. And it's all, to me, it's like all the same. Like put as much good and positivity out there as you can.
When you're overseeing your clients' net worth and such, do you see any correlation between generosity and success?
100%. 100%. There's also, I believe, and I don't want to say it because I can't quote the study, but I remember seeing something, maybe I'll send it to you after if I could find it, but there is a rate of return on dollars given. And outside of that, the fiscal side of it, I just think it's the mindset. A giving mindset in any capacity receives more, not even financially, but just life in general. So yeah, there is, a high correlation, 100%. Yeah.
What is it about giving more that makes you feel good?
One, you feel better about yourself. That's the first thing. We're all wired to make ourselves happy, right? But two, if you're so lucky to see the impact, it's reinforcing, right? So, when we look at the nonprofits you might want to volunteer with, or even if you walk down the street and, you give somebody a sandwich or something, you feel good and you realize you kind of left an impact on somebody else. So that mentality is, if the goal is always to give more than you can get.
Jacky, I love that. What's next for you?
I do love what I do. I mean, it's very corny, but I do not feel like our Monday morning meetings. I named it TGIM. Thank God it's Monday again. I sincerely, passionately love what I do. It's, so I will be doing that for a while. Outside of that, I dabble with a couple things, a couple ideas. One is, speaking of nonprofits, is having some sort of financial literacy thing. I've had conversations with folks in the past, and I try not to put too much on my plate. But something real financial literacy. Back at Merrill, and I see these other firms have it. They have financial literacy, and it's okay, but it's kind of something where, hey, they show up for a day, have some interesting exercises. Maybe you learn something, maybe you don't, but there isn't any real habit forming, anything real significant. So I've seen programs around town that have more significant programs and really teach people how to kind of get out of their own way. And, let's talk about why you need an emergency fund, right? And let's talk about why you shouldn't be, using your credit card for everything first if you don't have the money. So I would like to do more of that. And also, this is more aspirational, but, maybe a speaking tour, do some public speaking engagements. I have some stuff I can talk about, but I don't know if anyone will listen. So.
Well, I'm happy to listen.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I'll follow the tour.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love because we've seen the Dave Ramsey, Tony Robbins go up there, talk about the hey, here's your financial plan. But it's almost like you need a workshop. You need to kind of do that accountability check in. It's like every 2 months. Hey, are you still maxing out the credit card, or are we kind of working that down?
It's one of those things, right? So I did a little bit of martial arts growing up, and I remember one of my coaches. He used to do a self-defense class, and the reason he started was because he says, all these young ladies will come and they'll take self-defense class, right? Which is great. But you take this class for 2 hours and then you move on with your life. And heaven forbid something actually happens. How much of that will you remember? How much of that, right? And his thing was like, I'm going to put on this class for free and you're going to come here at least once a week. Because when something does happen, then it's muscle memory. Then you actually know what to do. And I think that's the same with the financial literacy. It's, we can have a wonderful, we talked about it, we learned about this and that, but it's after a couple months, or, Mike Tyson says you have a plan to get punched in the face, right? And when you get punched in the face, are you going to remember that one class you had 3 months ago? So something that's just more consistent, or something that just is a real class that really drives behavior change, and not just checking off a box that says, hey, look how great of a firm we are. We're giving back to the community and teaching about checking accounts, So that would be something cool to do.
Well, you're helping people, and that's where your clients are there too.
Yeah.
Future clients. Yeah. It's like people who are terrified of putting themselves out of business usually do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the people who don't mind giving their secrets away then become like the keeper of secrets.
Yeah.
People want to hire the keeper of secrets.
Yeah. And in my opinion, and no disrespect on anyone, but if you're keeping your secrets, it means you're just not getting better. If I tell everyone how this, how the sausage is made, because I know what I'm doing next year this time is going to be better than what I'm doing now. Like, I'm always trying to learn, always trying to do better. So, we give the secrets away. People call in and they're not fit for us. My partner, Julian, was on the phone for an hour. Someone called in. They weren't right fit, but he's like, listen, you need to do this, get an emergency fund, do this, right? Because why not? Like, someone's reaching out for help them.
And that person isn't hiring you to be their wealth manager, but they're going to tell everyone they know how awesome that call was.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's good collateral damage,
Jacky, where can we find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, right? Jacky with a Y, Petit-Homme, Petit-Homme, or on Instagram, Jacky P, so Jacky, P as in Paul, _CFP, as in Certified Financial Planner.
Jacky, thank you so much for hanging out today.
Oh, thank you.
Woo!
Yeah.